decision. President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni has banned police bail for suspects accused of stealing PDM, that is parish development model items such as poultry, chicken, goats and cattle. Museveni said any police officer who grants bail to suspects accused of stealing PDM items will be arrested and dismissed. The president made the remarks in Kasese municipality as he visited some PDM program beneficiaries. Bira Perusi of Kizungu Cell in Kasese municipality is one of the successful beneficiaries of the parish development model. The 60-year-old lady with visual impairment received 1 million PDM cash 2 years ago and ventured into poultry. Out of the 1 million, she used 600 to purchase 100 chicks that earned her about 2 million after 3 months. From last year, Pelosi has sold chicken 8 times and progressed to own 750 chicks. She is estimated to be earning close to 10 million. President Museveni commended her for the good utilization of the PDM funds. During the visit, President Museveni took a strong stand on police bail for suspects accused of stealing PDM items such as chicken, goats and cattle. The area leader included the State Minister for ICT, Godfrey Kabyanga, who expressed hope in PDM's fight against poverty. At least 250 people have benefited from each parish within Kasese municipality since the program was launched 4 years ago. Now it is police bond, not bail. Lugazi Diocese will animate the 2025 3rd June Martyrs' Day celebrations on behalf of Kampala Ecclesiastic Province under the Uganda Episcopal Conference. Established in 1996, the diocese last animated Martyrs' Day celebrations in 2003 for the first time under Bishop Matthias Sekamanya. This year's will be the second time Lugazi Diocese animates the 3rd June as the Catholics celebrate Martyrs' Day under the stewardship of Bishop James Kakoza. The event will feature several liturgical services, cultural performance and spiritual reflection. The Vicar General Lugazi Diocese, Monsignor Richard Kayondo, said prior to 3rd June, the diocese will host several activities. Out of the required budget for preparation, only 50% of the funds have so far been raised. The funds will aid liturgical activities and support the 500-member choir drawn from the 35 parishes of the diocese. The diocese appeals to government and all well-wishers for support. On security, the safety reasons, the diocese has called upon all pilgrims to register with their respective parishes. Lugazi Diocese has 2 significant sites of where the 2 martyrs, Ponsiano Ngondwe and Mukasa Kiri Wavu, were buried. The diocese is working out plans to ensure that the 2 sites are developed. The theme for the celebrations is, "Oh Lord, let me see again. I, your pilgrim of hope," was integrated with the Jubilee year announced by the late Pope Francis. The Uganda Martyrs were among a group of 22 Catholics and 23 Anglican converts to Christianity in the Kingdom of Uganda who were executed between 1885 and 1887 under the order of Kabaka Mwanga II Basamula Ekere. The traffic police have urged motorists to strictly adhere to the traffic guidelines as the country counts down to the Martyrs' Day celebrations. Pilgrims have started trekking to Namugongo from across the country to honor the Uganda martyrs. Pilgrims have started trekking to Namugongo in Kampala for Martyrs' Day celebrations slated for the 3rd of June. As pilgrims hit the road, police is cautioning motorists against reckless driving. In the first week of May, police registered 35% of accidents attributed to reckless driving and overspeeding. Meanwhile, 7 warriors were arrested, 2 guns and 4 bullets recovered during police operations in Karamoja. Police have also arrested suspects in Mpigi for terrorizing residents. And finally, on the local scene, Machindia West Member of Parliament Alan Sewanyana, Mike Serada, Jackson Kanyike, John Mugera and Buru Wamala are still facing the charges of machete killings that occurred in Masaka and Rengo districts. Following the death of Mohamed Segrinya, prosecution during the last court sitting dropped all the charges against the deceased. Fresh charges against the accused include the count of terrorism, murder and attempted murder. Lady Justice Alice Komohanji Kahuka is presiding over the case. Other offenses include financing terrorism activities against Alan Sewanyana, where prosecution alleges that Sewanyana financed the accused Mike Serada, Jack Kanyike, John Mugerwa, Buru Wamala to carry out machete killings in Masaka and Rengo district. Since the case is still under pre-trial, the accused were not allowed to take plea. During the pre-trial hearing, prosecution told the defense some of the evidence and exhibits they intend to rely on during the hearing. Lady Justice Alice Komohangi directed prosecution to file its submissions before 12th of June 2025 and the defense to respond to the submissions thereafter. Court will deliver the ruling on 26 July 2025. Alan Sewanyana's bail was extended while the co-accused were further remanded. And with that, we come to the end of our local stories.
I can't imagine the sigh of relief that Honorable Alan Sewanyana will have come July in case he's found innocent of those charges. But anyways, moving on to the foreign scene, let's go straight to the USA, where Sean Diddy Combs, who used fame and violence to sexually abuse women, prosecutors made that statement in the opening of his case. Now, statements at the hip-hop mogul's trial were made while the rapper's attorneys defended his swinger lifestyle. The 55-year-old has pleaded not guilty to charges including racketeering, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. The court also heard from prosecutors' first witnesses, including a security guard from a hotel where Mr. Combs is seen in a now viral video beating his ex-girlfriend in 2016. His testimony was followed by a man who said Mr. Combs abused his ex-girlfriend during paid sexual encounters with the couple. After sitting a panel of 12 jurors and 6 alternates on Monday morning, the government and Mr. Combs' lawyers outlined their cases. Prosecutor Emily Johnson accused Mr. Combs of using his celebrity status as a loyal inner circle of employees to sexually abuse women and run a criminal enterprise. Well, staying in the U.S., they say that when the U.S. and China sneeze, the rest of the world will catch a cold, and when they heal, the rest of the world will definitely warm up. But share markets jumped up on Monday after President Trump said weekend talks had resulted in a total reset in trade terms between the U.S. and China, a move which goes some way to defuse the high-stakes standoff between the two countries. The talks in Switzerland resulted in significant cuts to the tit-for-tat tariffs that had been stuck up since January on both sides. The U.S. will lower those tariffs from 145% to 30%, while China's retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods will drop to 10% from 125%. President Trump told reporters that as some of the levies have been suspended rather than cancelled altogether, they might rise again in 3 months' time if no further progress was made. However, he said he did not expect them to return to the previous 145% peak. We're not looking to hurt China, Trump said after the agreement was announced, adding that China was being hurt very badly. They were closing up factories and they were having a lot of unrest, and they were very happy to be able to do something with us. He said he expected to speak to Chinese President Xi Jinping maybe at the end of the week. Very interesting how Trump can turn the narrative. But staying with matters US, but this time around with South Africa, a group of 59 white South Africans have arrived in the US where they are to be granted refugee status. President Donald Trump has said the refugee applications for the country's Afrikaner minority had been expedited as they were victims of racial discrimination. The South African government said the group were not suffering any such persecution that would merit refugee status. Now, the Trump administration has halted all other refugee admissions, including for applicants from war zones. Human Rights Watch described the move as a cruel racial twist, saying that thousands of people, many black and Afghan refugees, had been denied refugee in the US. The group of white South Africans who landed at Dallas Airport near Washington, D.C. on Monday received a warm welcome from U.S. authorities. Some held young children and waved small American flags in the arrival area, adorned with red, white, and blue balloons on the walls. The processing of refugees in the U.S. often takes months, even years, but this group has been fast-tracked. Now, UNHCR, the United Nations Refugee Agency, confirmed to the BBC it was not involved in the vetting, as is usually the case. All right, with that foreign update, let's have a look at what's with the dailies.
Very interesting here, government to regulate tax operators. That is a big headline in the New Vision this morning. And Monsignor Magembe laid to rest, the Bukalango man of God was laid to rest. Then Sam Mayanja, why Mengo's attempt to capture state power may backfire. The New Vision gives you that. And details of new UPDF amendment bill. What are the details there? EU envoy calls for level playing field in 2026 polls. And still we see President Museveni carrying on the parish development model and wealth creation tour. He's in Kasese. Now still looking at the New Vision, why more teens are unhappy. Okay, now allow me quickly move to the Daily Monitor this morning. Now inside the UPDF bail to try citizens, inside the UPDF bill to try citizens, what is the content there? The Daily Monitor gives you more. But above is Bobby, music industry, who misses the other? A big question there. That is Robert Chagulanyi and the music industry. There are tenders for you still in the Daily Monitor this morning. Now, government to introduce, or MPs to vote on 7 new taxes. Which taxes are these? Let's quickly look at them now. TIN replacement, the tax identification number TIN with the national identification number NIN for individuals in collecting individual taxes. It won't be your TIN number. Now they're bringing your NIN number. Where do you dodge? Nowhere. And here we come, beer. Beer increase in excise duty on beer, raising the rate from 650 to 900 per liter. That is the tax that every liter will go for. Now on cigarette, an increase in excise duty on locally produced cigarettes by 10,000 per 50 packs. And those are some of the areas where taxation will be introduced. They're going to be introduced on the floor of Parliament. And these are the Value Addition Tax Bill, Amendment Bill 2025, the Excise Duty Amendment Bill 2025, Tax Procedure Code Amendment Bill. We have the External Trade Amendment Bill, the Stamp Duty Amendment Bill, and Hides and Skin Export Duty Amendment Bill. So there are 7 coming to the floor of Parliament for MPs to vote. If they go through, these are taxes you're going to be paying. But the lizard, as usual, the brother still has something to say regarding inside UPDF bill to try civilians. The lizard says, since we fear the army, it will just pass.
Well, moving on to the rest of East Africa, let's have a look at the Citizen. And in the Citizen, we are looking at minerals to watch as new ores challenge dominance in gold. And really, since Tanzania's most valuable mineral, that new data, gold is Tanzania's most valuable mineral, but new data reveals that the production of other mineral resources is increasing at an impressive rate. That is a story to be found in the Citizen. Still in the Citizen, mixed reactions greet creation of 8 new constituencies. And MCL boss rallies media to boost coverage of innovation drive. And government saves 4.9 million through digital procurement system. That is very, very profound, I must say. But quickly, let's have a look at what is in the Daily Nation. The enemy within. In a rare public disclosure, the National Intelligence Service NIC Director General Nurdin Haji yesterday said that the country must be told the brutal truth about the magnitude of national security threats posed by foreign militia. That is in the Daily Nation. And concern, spy chief says inadequate funding from exchequer exposing country to risks, but also blow to Gachagua as allies abandon him. This is the Daily Nation. Anyways, family planning scandal of ineffective contraceptives, and not lobbies powers for primary school heads to run junior high school. And that brings us to the end of what is in the dailies. You better get yourself a copy.
Judy, there's something very interesting
yes, please.
that I don't want us to, or I feel we should re-echo. Now, yesterday, President Museveni, while in Kasese,
yes, please.
He ordered or he directed, or we use the word banned, police bond for suspects accused of stealing PDM items such as poultry, goats, and cattle.
Right.
Now, you're no longer entitled to your right of bond, which is a constitutional right. Should you steal a cow that someone has bought using PDM money, chicken, or a goat that someone has bought using PDM money, you'll be there until the investigations are done, then you're taken to court, either acquitted or found guilty. I'm waiting to see how this is going to move.
Surely, indeed, it's a story that will definitely have some involvement with it. But for now, let's have a short break with Naughty Boy Should Have Been Me.
Live from UPC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda.
The diocese appeals to government and all well-wishers for support. On security, the safety reasons, the diocese has called upon all pilgrims to register with their respective parishes. Lugazi Diocese has 2 significant sites of where the 2 martyrs, Ponsiano Ngondwe and Mokasa Kiri Wavu, were buried. The diocese is working out plans to ensure that the 2 sites are developed. The theme for the celebrations is, "Oh Lord, let me see again. I, your pilgrim of hope," was integrated with the Jubilee year announced by the late Pope Francis. The Uganda martyrs were among a group of 22 Catholics and 23 Anglican converts to Christianity in the Kingdom of Uganda who were executed between 1885 and 1887 under the order of Kabaka Mwanga II Basamula Ekere. The traffic police have urged motorists to strictly adhere to the traffic guidelines as the country counts down to the Martyrs' Day celebrations. Pilgrims have started trekking to Namugongo from across the country to honor the Uganda martyrs. Pilgrims have started trekking to Namugongo in Kampala for Martyrs' Day celebrations slated for the 3rd of June. As pilgrims hit the road, police is cautioning motorists against reckless driving. In the first week of May, police registered 35% of accidents attributed to reckless driving and overspeeding. Meanwhile, 7 warriors were arrested, 2 guns and 4 bullets recovered during police operations in Karamoja. Police have also arrested suspects in Impigi for terrorizing residents. And finally, on the local scene, Machindia West Member of Parliament Alan Sewanyana, Mike Serada, Jackson Kanyike, John Mugera and Buru Wamala are still facing the charges of machete killings that occurred in Masaka and Rengo districts. Following the death of Muhammad Segrinya, prosecution during the last court sitting dropped all the charges against the deceased. Fresh charges against the accused include the count of terrorism, murder and attempted murder. Lady Justice Alice Komohanji Kahuka is presiding over the case. Other offenses include financing terrorism activities against Alan Sewanyana, where prosecution alleges that Sewanyana financed the accused Mike Serada, Jack Kanyike, John Mugerwa, Buru Wamala to carry out machete killings in Masaka and Rengo district. Since the case is still under pre-trial, the accused were not allowed to take plea. During the pre-trial hearing, prosecution told the defense some of the evidence and exhibits they intend to rely on during the hearing. Lady Justice Alice Komohangi directed prosecution to file its submissions before 12th of June 2025 and the defense to respond to the submissions thereafter. Court will deliver the ruling on 26th July 2025. Alan Sewanyana's
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
I'll call you every day, yeah, yo, baby, don't know.
You can now get all the Chibuzi out with MTN voice bundles. Call all networks. Kubei Dondoro. Buy a 25-minute voice bundle for only 1,000 or buy any daily voice bundle of your choice. Dial *100 *21 hash and select daily or use the My MTN app. When we talk together, we are unstoppable.
Juko.
Yo.
Check the shopping, man. What's your secret?
Uganda, haven't you heard of the parish development model PDM?
Yes, I did, but I thought it was just a talk.
No, Sebatia. It is real. I and a few friends together formed a circle, accessed money from the PDM, invested in a portrait project, and now things are moving.
Juko. I thought I was one of your friends.
You are.
But you left me behind.
I didn't leave you in poverty. What you do, just visit your LC2 chairperson and your parish chief and start the process of economic transformation. Just like that. The parish development model is an initiative from the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Local Government designed to transform all lives of Ugandans for the better. PDM, my parish, my development, my life.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda.
It is Good Morning Uganda. It might be raining, but it is a beautiful morning, and it's what we purpose to bring to you. Now, on the 5th of May, which was last week, it was International Nurses and Midwives Celebration Day. And it was a celebration for the whole week, and it's going on throughout the month, and the conversations regarding nurses and midwives' welfare does continue. Now, the theme for this year was Our Nurses, Our Future. Caring for nurses strengthens economies. And as UBC on Friday, we did host 3 amazing ladies, 2 nurses and a midwife, passionate at that, who took us through a conversation and in an in-depth insight of what the world of nursing is like, what is meant to be done, what they believe should be done, especially for Uganda as they celebrated this particular day. And that conversation does continue today with Robert Chirabo Nyonyintono as we look deeper into the welfare of nurses and midwives in Uganda. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning once again, and of course for our viewer, thank you so much for keeping it with us.
Yes, indeed. So let's discuss the role that nurses play in Uganda's healthcare system.
Well, thank you, Julie. And first of all, I want to give out flowers to all the nurses, both the female and the male. You know, previously, nursing was a profession dominated by the women. But much as the ladies have come for professions that were traditionally for the men, also the men are venturing into. Today, the best chefs are men, I'm told. The best midwives are men, I'm told. The best nurses are men, I'm told.
Well, actually, I think it's a thing of swapping gender. When you find a man who does what women do the most, he does it impeccably well. When you find a lady who does what men do, she does it impeccably well. In my experience, really. Yes.
Now, going back to the topic of discussion, looking at the role of the nurse. In summary, the nurse sees you at the first office when you enter a health facility and the last office. I'm going to explain this, but in the nursing language, there's what they call the first office and what they call the last office. The last office is not that very good, but we'll talk about it now. When you go to any health facility, the first person you see is a nurse, not a doctor. It is the nurse who will welcome you, ask you those questions, carry that report, like take your temperature, your height, know some of the issues you've come with, then take that report to the doctor. In good hospitals also come with you to the doctor.
Right.
Now, the doctor will recommend tests to be done on you. Now, you either go to the lab. Now, after the lab and the tests have come back, the doctor will look at the tests, then recommend the medication. The medication, if it includes having a drip, it is the nurse. That's not the field of the doctor. If it recommends an injection or injections, that is the nurse. Now, if it's like an accident, the nurse will prepare you, as in dress you and all that, dress the injuries. Then the doctor will come, ask a few questions, and later prescribe if you need an X-ray, you need a scan, and all that. But don't forget that countries like Uganda, our health sector relies predominantly on nurses. That's why when you go to rural areas, a nurse is called Musau. Because in most of the health centers, the people who work on you, who treat you, are nurses, not even doctors. And nurses, not doctors.
All right.
So, the first person to receive you throughout the journey of your treatment, if you recover, is the nurse.
So, in other words,
now,
a nurse...
Just wait.
Yes.
And the nurse does not only end at that. When the Lord calls you for a visit and a permanent stay, it's a morning show. I know people fear some words, so let me use that. When the angels pick you to take you, the doctor will make a report pronounced, gone to heaven. Very few will put hell, but gone to heaven. Now, it is the nurse who will come after you've been pronounced and prepare you, and their training says, according to your faith. Prepare you properly, then hand you over to the mortuary. Yes. So that is the first office and the last office. Then the morgue, of course, they will do other things, but you're well prepared, and the nurse will see you in the first and your last office.
So essentially, a nurse, you're in contact with a nurse from the start to the finish.
She's the backbone.
Less than a doctor. You're in touch.
Less than the doctor. The doctors don't do much.
Right.
in the treatment chain,
Right.
globally, not only in Uganda, doctors do less work. That is why you'll find in some countries, you find that nurses are highly paid because they carry out most of the work in the treatment cycle is done by the nurse.
Right. We are having a conversation on the welfare of nurses and midwives in Uganda, and we are joining the rest of the world, continue to join the rest of the world that is celebrating International Nurses and Midwives Day or month. The day was 5th of May, and it's going on and on in this particular month of May. Now, if you want to be on the conversation, if you are a nurse, if you are a midwife, very pertinent conversation, one that touches you, please get in touch. 0709 602 592. 0709 602 592 is the WhatsApp number to which you can share your opinion and get to be a part of the conversation. Now, Robert, you've painted a picture, the reality at that nurses are in touch with us from the very start of the process when you step foot into that hospital until the time you leave either alive or have passed on. But what challenges do they face? Because one of them that is very evident in experience is the fact that nurses tend to be taken in lower hierarchy, which I don't think should be the case, but I think it's a stereotypical setting or some form of painting that has been put in our minds that when you see a nurse, you first trust a doctor before you trust a nurse, or you hail a doctor more than you hail a nurse. Yet this nurse is in touch with you from the time you step foot into hospital to the time that you leave. So paint us a picture of the challenges that nurses and midwives face in Uganda.
First, I want to quickly go to that. One, it's a mixture of ignorance that most people do not understand because they have not been explained very well who a nurse is in their treatment cycle. I tell you, the nurse is the backbone in the treatment cycle. The nurse will be there with you throughout and only call a doctor. That's why they even have a term in the medical, doctor on call. That doctor is not going to be with you in the treatment cycle. He may be called doctor, the patient is like this, by a nurse, and the nurse gives the doctor a report. Then the doctor can say, give this medication and this medication. But the nurse will see you through at every cycle. Also, because we still have what they call certificate nurses, and there's that mindset, a doctor studies for how many years? Now, a nurse, previously, our nurses were not going so much to degree level. Neither do we have a number of nurses who have specialized. Like you see the doctors. A doctor will do the 5 years, then become a specialist. A gyna, maybe a psychiatrist. So there is that specialization. So there is what is attached to that, then coupled with ignorance. Now, one of the challenges of nurses, first and foremost, is excessive workload. Nurses in Uganda, whether in government or private, they have excessive workload. No wonder sometimes you blame them. But the fact is we don't know that these people are having excessive workload. For example, World Health Organization may not have specific ratios because they vary country. But at least they are looking at they're looking at 2 nurses per 1,000 patients. Now, when you come to our country, you'll have 1 nurse per 11,000 patients. The ratio, according to the nurses or medical council. Now, already this is a lot of workload that these nurses have. No wonder they get exhausted. You know, sometimes we go to these public hospitals and for us we do the blame game, but we do not understand for how many hours has this nurse been on duty. How many hours are recommended for a nurse to be on duty?
And if you say that, like I mentioned, that on Friday when we hosted three ladies who are in the nursing and midwifery fraternity, one of them, Elizabeth Pearson, mentioned that the best thing a nurse could do to deliver the best work is to heal from burnout. In other words, when you're tired, admit it, leave it's okay.
Well, it
So
depends.
even if sometimes
For Uganda,
yes,
how are you
the-
going
the-
to
the
live? It
employment
is
sys-
okay.
the employment system that is, you notice that sometimes causes us, or maybe bears people who are not able to speak up and say that right now I'm unable to, but rather we just resiliently continue on.
Now, for a nurse, why it's very dangerous, when you're exhausted, you'll offer, because a nurse will be in a ward. She's coming with the drugs to give, but she's exhausted. Now, drugs meant for you who is suffering from something I don't know may be given to me who is suffering from something you don't know.
Another, yeah.
I've heard of these incidents, but the nurse later on remembers that actually, or she may make a mistake. I remember one time I was in hospital and there was a drug that I was given that has a bad reaction. However, there is another drug you take with it to avoid that reaction. I almost died. But it's later when the doctor rushed in and people were many surrounding me, and the nurse and the doctor asked the nurse, but did you give this drug to this person? The nurse said, I'm told, because I wasn't aware of what was happening. So the nurse remembered, and they had to use all ways to ensure I take that stuff. Now, but it was a burnout. Now, if the nurse doesn't give wrong medicine, she may even inject wrong.
Yeah.
So they suffer from excessive workload.
But also let's
True.
put in mind their emotional well-being.
Yes.
Because they're the people who are with a patient from the start, but they also are most times with a patient when they pass on.
When they pass
and that long stay with a patient sometimes has emotional attachments. The passing on doesn't treat them well, and no one ever asks how they are feeling at the loss of someone they've been giving care
Actually, we
to.
are very complacent and believe that nurses, doctors are used to seeing people die. And of course, some that didn't get good training will tell you, for us, a person dying, people die, people die, people die. So we have that. No one, in Africa, I don't think about that psychological things, mental. We are so body hardened, yet they are realities. Now, two, away from the workload that they go through, nurses suffer from lack of medical supplies and equipment.
All right.
Personal protective equipment in most of these hospitals, it is scarce. It's not there. Nurses don't have gloves in some hospitals. Nurses don't have some supplies that they need. For example, the sanitizers. In case someone was treating someone and they suspect they have got a plague, so they lack the supplies and the tools they need to work as nurses. That's a very big challenge. Now, away from that, these nurses pay. You'll find that in Uganda, a person did a certificate, went for a diploma, went for a degree, but they're still paid the pay of someone maybe who has a diploma. Their level of payment does not recognize their level of education. That's why you may find that today, very few nurses have gone to specialize. The medical field is changing of late, Julie. That today, the doctors, the people in the medical field have started what they call, or for some time, they said what they call specialization. That now you no longer have not so many doctors or physicians, like I said, medicine, I'm a doctor.
A general doctor.
A general doctor. Most of them are specializing. And that's where there is money. To be honest, there is a lot of money when you specialize. If I'm a specialist dealing with the brain. One time I had a doctor, I think it was called Chiriawire. He passed on and I think he had only trained his son. I'm told many others were not passing the exams. But his son. So he left a gap of experts in that field. That in Uganda today it is one man, you'll find that person, a day he comes to Zambia, a day he's in Mulago, a day. No, when we specialize, there is money. And for the doctors, the specialists, because they are consultants, they're making good money. Now, nurses in other countries have also followed suit. A nurse specializes, not a general nurse. You'll find one who will tell you that one specialized these issues of the kidney. This is a term they use, but it will come along. That one, dialysis or something like that. She's an expert there. This one, she's an expert in mental health. So what is here, they are not embracing that so much, because even when you have that, the pay is not being reflected.
Right.
It will come to the doctors.
Let's also look at the low employment rates in Uganda. Many trained nurses are not employed. Yet at the same time, Uganda's healthcare system is struggling with numbers when it comes to deployment of nurses. One nurse, like you've mentioned, handles 11,000 patients, yet many are sitting at home because they haven't yet been employed in the healthcare system. Why do you think it is so?
One, government's ability to absorb them is still a very big challenge. We remember, was it last year, when we had medical interns go through a lot?
That's true.
Because government didn't have the funds. At the end of the day, men were told, if you can't afford this for us, we can give you this. Now, government cannot employ you when they are not sure that they have the monies to pay. For us sitting here, we may say, but there are so many nurses there. But if government is employing 1,000 nurses, and maybe each is getting 600, let's take to that, every month, how much money is that? So government's inability to absorb the nurses as they are churned out in various training schools and universities is what is causing this, because the nurses are there. But when you employ them under public service, when you employ them on government payroll, do you have what to pay them? And I want to also quickly add on priorities. Our budget of Ministry of Health, how much of this, yes, we need new health facilities, we need medicine, but how much of the budget are we taking to recruitment? Do we recruit every year? Do we recruit every financial year? Saying, no, we need to improve on recruitment. I think also there is a priority issue. When I go to the Ministry of Health, I rarely visit there. But when I go there, I see fleets of vehicles, and I'm like, is this Ministry of Health or Transport or something? So how much of our monies are we prioritizing for recruitment? I think there's still a problem. However, I also want to commend government for liberalizing the health sector. That now we have private health institutions. And some of these private health institutions are big. They're more like hospitals.
Right.
Go to the likes of Nakasero, Doctors Clinic, Seguku, mention but a few, you know, HK, whatever. They're hospitals, and they're employing these nurses. But that does not mean that government should not, because these are people who may start their own health facilities, and the bad thing is that most of these facilities we are praising today belong to people working for government. There is no law against it, but it has its issues also.
I think recently in the dailies there was something said that those who are employed by the government should not own businesses outside of government, schools, hospitals, and that. Anyways, we are celebrating and commemorating nurses and midwives. 0709602592 is the WhatsApp number to which you can share your opinion as we discuss this. Now let's highlight the resilience of nurses in Uganda's healthcare system and dedication at that.
If there are people who are dedicated, away from our brothers and sisters in the armed forces, and of course the journalists, the other group is nurses.
Right.
Let me tell you, when you move up country and see some of the situations some of these nurses are working under, they are very, very complicated circumstances. When you look at how much these nurses are paid and how they make it to work and perform, you may wonder. They're living hand to mouth, yet every day you go to a clinic, you go to a government health center, you want them to meet you with a smile. They're very resilient. Many of them previously had staff, nurses' quarters, doctors' quarters, all those things now are not around in a number of health facilities belonging to government.
Would that also explain why in most, especially public hospitals, nurses tend to come off as rude and midwives? tend to come off as rude.
There are quite a number of problems that may cause that.
Right.
And we can't have a specific problem, neither also rule out that some are just unprofessional and they don't look at their professional code of ethics. But you see, circumstances under which someone works can influence their reactions to the public. Now, if you're working where you don't have supplies and equipment that you need, that is already something that is a turn-off. Now, coupled with excessive burden, excessive workload, and working long hours, that is another stress. Now, if you also look at the issues that you're leaving work very late, you're going very far for rest, it's so. Their environment, that's why we say we want to praise their resilience. Because they're working under tough conditions, yet they are working at saving lives.
Right. With the welfare of nurses and midwives in Uganda, it really paints a lot as to what the healthcare system is like in Uganda. It's still begging for a lot because it's people's lives that are at stake. Sticking with the theme, our nurses, our future. Caring for nurses strengthens economies. And I will close with a reminder from Laura Serrant when we hosted her on Friday. She mentioned something pertinent that I will also re-echo. She mentioned men learn to go for regular medical checkups. Do not wait when it's worse, when you're feeling worst or feeling so bad. Go for regular medical checkups as a man. Happy International Nurses and Midwives Month to all nurses and midwives in Uganda.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
I'll call you every day, yeah, yo, baby, don't know.
You can now get all the Chibuzi out with MTN voice bundles. Call all networks. Kubei Dondoro. Buy a 25-minute voice bundle for only 1,000. Or buy any daily voice bundle of your choice. Dial *100*21# and select daily or use the My MTN app. When we talk together, we are unstoppable.
Juko.
Yo.
Check the shopping, man. What's your secret?
Uganda wange, haven't you heard of the parish development model PDM?
Yes, I did, but I thought it was just a talk.
No, Sebatia. It is real. I and a few friends together formed a circle, accessed money from the PDM, invested in a poultry project, and now things are moving.
Juko. I thought I was one of your friends.
You are.
But you left me behind.
I didn't live in poverty. But what you do, just visit your LC2 chairperson and your parish chief and start the process of economic transformation. Just like that. The parish development model is an initiative from the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Local Government designed to transform all lives of Ugandans for the better. PDM, my parish, my development, my life.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Maskari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archived stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
And thankful Lord, we are excited this morning. It woke up really cold, but the weather is starting to become a little bit friendly. If you are still home and you haven't left, maybe you can carry a jacket with you. Well, good morning and thank you once again for choosing UBC. My name is Zakia Lucky and we are in good. Today we'll be discussing a very interesting topic which takes us towards the International Museums Day, and that is the future of museums in rapidly changing communities. But before we get into that discussion, today there's a museums fair at Emin Pasha, which is a pre-International Museums Day activity. Very free of charge, you can pass by. There will be different museums and independent collectors that are going to be exhibiting and showcasing their artifacts. So find some time today. It started yesterday and it will be ending tomorrow. Well, with me is the Commissioner, Museums and Monuments in the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities, who goes by the names of Jackie Nyirachiza Vesige. I'm happy to have you this morning.
Nice to have you too, Zakia.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Yes, please say hello to the viewers.
Good morning, viewers. I'm glad to be here this morning. Of course, a cold morning, but beautiful. And we thank the Lord for that.
Thank you so much. Yes, we are 3 days towards the International Museums Day.
Yes.
But before we get into the actual event, let's get to the theme itself. What does this theme mean to you?
Thank you very much, Zakia. And this theme, the future of museums in the, the rapid changing communities. Zakia, I think the person or the team that framed this theme, looked at how the global world, how different communities are changing, or they are, trying to adapt with currently the climate change and with, the global trends whereby you need to fit in archaeology or science, we say survival for the fittest. And so we are looking at, how communities can adapt to the advancement in technology, in, trying to see how they can fit in. And so regarding the museum, we are looking at this space, the spaces, museum spaces, to be places where communities can, can be developed. That is, with our current NDP or the current national theme, where we need to get people from peasantry to middle income economy. And so here we are looking at communities with the current rapid changing, with the current situation where the environment, you see environmental shift. You see that, there is a lot of desertification that is coming in. So when the environment is shifting, what do we do to adapt? So for the museum, we are saying that the communities, first of all, should be engaged in doing activities, in creativeness, in, for example, knowing about crafts, that is creative, music, dance and drama, crafts, and also having these spaces whereby they can come and educate themselves, because the museums are only places where you do like free education. You have to interact with communities, you bring them together, there is that social cohesion, you know, you have the social cohesion, you have the understanding of where we were 1 million years ago to how we have been going, and how best we can use our past experience to forge a way forward for the future. And so this theme was well thought, and looking at the main, the National Development Goals, the SDGs, they also looked at SDG 8, 9, and 11. And so when I look at SDG 10, 11, this is where we are looking at sustainable cities, sustainable communities. What do we do for sustainability? And for us as museums, what have we done for this ever-changing environment, the environment that is changing every day? We are saying that we are going to adapt to technology. For example, to create museum spaces in our current museum that we are going to be, that we are renovating, we are saying that we are going to put in technology whereby people can enjoy the virtual tours, whereby people can come and use technology to understand, you know, to learn about the past. And so we are going also to use technology for people to see our spaces, our museum and cultural heritage. You can be here in Kampala or here at UBC, and then you're able to view activities that are happening in Bigo bya Mugenyi.
Yes.
And so, of course, that is adaptation. And so where you know that, you know, you want also to understand about not poaching. For us, it is encroachment. It is about understanding illicit trafficking. Then you use technology to be able to reduce on some of the threats that are towards conservation. So this theme was well thought, and we are ready to continue unpacking it and make sure that the communities, private museums, community museums benefit. And since even it rhymes with our national development goals.
Yes, you talked about sustainability, technology, and the communities. And Uganda is a home of hundreds of museums and heritage sites. How has the department responded towards, how's the department responded towards the packaging and the fast-growing industry regarding technology when we look at community needs?
Yeah, the department currently, of course, regarding technology, we have started digitalizing, okay? For example, at the museum so far, we have digitalized 200 objects. We have made a catalog that is going to be online, that the schools are going to use. You know, COVID-19 taught us a lot. And so we said that we can bring, you know, these services closer to the community by using the by using technology. So we have digitalized different objects, and so we are putting them online. But again, with the communities, we have gone to the communities using our technology, which is the rig van. You know, we have the documented information, which we are taking to communities for them to learn and understand. With the hundreds of museums that are coming in, community museum, private museums, of course we are working with them to make sure that they also adapt, to make sure that, you know, they are not only getting income, but use, you know, environmental, you know, technological, make sure that the spaces they have are used for social cohesion, are used to resolve conflicts, because museums are places, again, where you can use, because it's through cultural heritage. If I talk about like the Matoput in northern Uganda, if we do not document like the Matoput, tomorrow, 200 years to come, you'll see that there is no more Matoput. You know, if I talk about Matoput, making peace, where they share on the same calabash, you know, as they are as part of peace or reconciliation. So such things, it's these museum spaces that can continue, you know, making sure that apart from documenting them, they keep bringing communities to the museum, having, you know, dialogue. You know, currently the National Museum, if you have followed for the last 5 years, we were having every year a dialogue, you know, getting to bring people, and then they talk to us. They tell the public, you know, about what happened, like on independence in 1962, what happened during Idi Amin. We have had all that dialogue. So that one helps us to keep the communities connected, and that is our focus in the next 5 years, to make sure that the communities are connected and we do not divert from our cultural values. Because with the rapid changing communities, we are saying that our national theme is preserving our heritage for transformation. So if we do not preserve our values, if we do not talk about our values, automatically with this kind of digital era, with this kind of, you know, children understanding these phones better than us, then we can easily lose the future. And so we don't want to lose the future. We want to use the museum spaces to make sure that we have the future that we can control, or that our future generations, because we are preserving for future generations that can control.
Government has actually played a very good role with museums. When you go to different regions, there's somehow a museum that is there to preserve all these artifacts of that particular area. And talking about communities that are playing all these roles, what roles are they really putting in place to preserve them? Because it is the same communities that will also look at some of them as invaluable. Yes.
I will give you an example of some communities that have really worked hard to preserve, okay? I will give you, of course, right now we have an umbrella of museums, UKOMA, which is a union for museums in Uganda that are usually facilitated by CCFU. But I will give one example of Kakungulu Museum. When we opened Kakungulu Museum in Mbare, we saw how communities gathered. The lineage of Kakungulu came to talk about their great-grandfather. And that is the opportunity that we can use to document what happened in 1900 or in 1800s, or towards, you know, the end of that century. And so you find that currently people are coming to the museum, even where, you know, our act talks about conservation and safeguarding the sites of outstanding universal or outstanding value to Ugandans, or significant value to Ugandans. We have had communities come to the museum or come to the ministry to register sites and monuments that are of value. These days, we have seen it, you know, it has become, and we want to thank these platforms which have enabled us to reach out to the communities, because now people are coming to tell us about the sites, to tell us about culture, and so we just do a follow-up. That shows how the communities also do not want to divert, you know, from their past, but moving with the past to shape the future. Yeah.
And talking about preservations, we do not leave the young people out in the picture, because these are the future. Are there partnerships that have been put in place, probably in schools, universities, regarding preserving the cultures of these museums in the country?
Yes, Zakia. we have, as Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities, I told you with partnership, we had funding from World Bank. And so, we developed a strategy, a museums and monuments strategy, and which strategy, of course, has a vision whereby we are looking at a nation proud of its heritage. And so for us to be proud of our heritage is to make sure that we transfer it to the future generations. And so we have been moving to schools. Remember that our national curriculum has a component of culture heritage. So we have been moving to different schools to talk about museums and heritage. We are partnering with the National Council of Education, the primary. Usually we have them when we are designing. We designed school books, the activity books, so that our children can use while at the museum spaces. But we also are in partnership with Makerere University, with Chambogo University, with Kabale University, with Mbarara University. Why? Because they are the ones training our children. And we know our students, our learners, have a lot to do with culture heritage. And so for us to make sure that this legacy is passed on, one was to talk to the national curriculum to make sure that the component of heritage is part of the curriculum, and we really want to thank Ministry of Education, because without them we wouldn't even having this crowd. By the way, our clientele at the museums, our main audience are the primary children, where we were having 140,000 of visitors at the National Museum and other sites. You find that 60% of that are the primary and secondary school goers.
The students.
The students. And so now you find that it is, you know, our obligation to make sure that these students get to know, you know, when they see a calabash, they should know that this calabash was used as a cup or as something, not only thinking about ceramics. And so really, that one, I would say that we thank Ministry of Education, because we have worked with them and we shall continue working with them to make sure that we create, you know, a future, you know, our generations in the future, our future generations are not lost. We want to make sure that we have a certain trend that is systematic. Yeah.
Thank you to the Ministry of Education. Indeed, the younger generation is also getting a chance to see the things they missed out on. Now, when we move towards the...
And maybe, Zakia, what I had forgotten is the youth.
Okay. What
have we done for the youth? I mentioned that we are bringing in technology. I mentioned that we are bringing in you know, digital transformation, whereby we recorded the old music, you know, like the Rutaya, the music of 1970s. And so every October, we do an intangible heritage activity at the museum, whereby we bring those the cassettes and their gramophones. They are gramophones, and whereby, you know, people can come and see what was music then. We have also partnered with the different, you know, those enthusiastic people who have collectors, likes of Semwanga, who has collected different kind of, you know, digital objects, telephones, you know, gramophones, TVs, of course with UBC as well, because UBC has everything in terms of communication since maybe Uganda was created. And so we are planning every year, every October, there is a day of ICH, Intangible Heritage, you know, culture heritage, whereby we want to be using that platform to talk about, you know, music, to talk about, you know, creativeness, you know, the arts people, the designers. We are very much aware that this is part of The component also goes with Ministry of Gender. They have also the Intangible Culture Department, but we work closely with them to make sure that, you know, we holistically, you know, build our nation, we holistically preserve our values, we work together to make sure that, you know, we create awareness about what was there before and what we want to see today.
Okay, when we move towards the International Museums Day, what are some of the activities that are being done prior to the event, and why did you choose Kabale?
Oh, okay. Now, the activities, of course, some of them you have mentioned, like today we have a fair at Emin Pasha Hotel, where the team of museums, especially those ones who are part of the ICOM International or who are registered members of ICOM International. ICOM is International Council of Museums, and so this is a non-governmental organization that, you know, is part of or subscribes to UN, and also began in 1977 when they saw that, you know, like museums were getting lost. And so even after, of course, you know, UN was formed after 1945, Second World War. And this is when we have also UNESCO coming in 1970, and of course we are also a signatory to the 1972 convention. And so 1977 also is the conservation of heritage comes in with, of course, different discussions on how best we can conserve tangible and intangible heritage. And so this year, of course, we have had several activities. We had the national conference where we brought in the youth, you know, and the, you know, different, we had former Principal Judge Ogola, who talked about how he understood culture, and also how culture should, move with, things like technology, looking at the current trends, saying that, currently we can't do without AI, which has come to stay. We can't do without digital transformation, using visual aids in museums for us to attract mainly the youth, using, things whereby we know that people can enjoy that space. And so we had that conference, which was very educative, which even talked about the user rights, And so today we have that. We have the conference, we have the museum exhibitions, and so we are going to Kabale. On 16th, we shall do the Explore Uganda or Explore Kigezi. And so that's when we start the journey to Kabale. So we are inviting, of course, people to join us to go and explore Kigezi. Why did we choose Kigezi? We know Kigezi is one of the homes of our, what we call hominins, or when I talk about hominins, these are the group of, mammals or animals where we think that us humans also came from. They are our next cousins. So it is a group of the gorillas, a home of gorillas. But again, as Ministry of Tourism and as a country, one of our goals is to make sure that we do regional balance.
Yes.
So if we went to Gulu the first time, we went to Soroti, and so this was the time to do Western Uganda as a way, as we create awareness about heritage, we need to look at regional balance. And we had done Kampalas many times, or Buganda or Central Region. And so we want to do that regional balance. We want to make people of Kigezi or Western Uganda understand the role of museum in this changing or evolving world. What should the museums do, the museum spaces do in the evolving world? How can they help communities to stay, to stay at the game, to make sure they, first of all, participate in the, you know, creating or ensuring that the values, the cultural values are maintained? How do you make sure that the people of Kigezi also are involved in the conservation of this heritage? The other day we were watching the film of Batwa. There is a team that has created a virtual reality, a 3D virtual reality on the Batwa. And these are the youth. So how are we trying? We are trying to now say that let's work with the people. Let's do documentation of all culture and tangible and intangible objects in the region, and make sure that the whole of Uganda by 2030 should be aware of cultural heritage, because we shall keep moving and we shall surely finish all the districts.
That sounds like it's really going to be interesting. So for those of you that are planning to see what you can do this weekend, come to Kigezi and experience the International Museums Day. It sounds like it's really going to be interesting. Well, it's been a very good discussion, and we'll be taking you to more of that. We are still on Good Morning Uganda, coming in with Julie.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Maskari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archive stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda.
Good morning, Uganda. Welcome back from GMU Tourism Express. It's a beautiful morning. It's bright now. Started with a bit of rain, but now it's bright. Time to move on to GMU Business. And we're starting off with NCBA Bank, which has reported a 13% growth in its balance sheet as of the financial year 2023-2024, with total assets rising to 963 billion Uganda shillings, and that is the case for NCBA Bank Uganda in particular. Now, the bank released the audited financial results on April 29th, 2025, and despite lending out 314 billion to customers, NCBA maintained a manageable non-performing loan ratio of 3.8%. Customer deposits rose from 567 billion Uganda shillings in 2023 to 654 billion Uganda shillings in 2024, a growth fueled by the bank's ongoing digitization of transactions and service delivery. NCBA Bank's customer base surged to 14 million, and More Cash, which provides lending and saving services to MTN mobile money users, has over 2 million borrowers who have accessed more than 2.8 trillion Uganda shillings in credit. Now, NCBA Chief Executive Officer Mark Muyobo applauded government's move to create sector-targeted corporate bonds, which would bolster the economy. NCBA Group is a major financial services conglomerate headquartered in Nairobi, Kenya, with operations spanning both East and West Africa. And the group's presence includes subsidiaries in Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Uganda, and Ivory Coast. Now, moving on to matters, the 4-acre model. This is an initiative from President Yoweri Museveni that has been adopted in Teso sub-region, with civil servants participating in it. A UPDF soldier operating from Bukedea district has adopted this model. Someone would imagine how difficult it would be for a Sergeant Richard Obenen, a UPDF soldier, to balance between being in the security department and agriculture, but there is a story, and here it is. Sergeant Obenen, who hails from Kowena village, Kowena parish in Kowena sub-county, says he started this about 5 years ago after getting an inspiration from President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Though he began with only 6 seedlings of passion fruit, Sergeant Obenen says he started this farm with a loan from their Wazalendo Bank, but currently he doesn't regret it as he makes over 500,000 monthly. Operating in 1 acre of land together with his beautiful home, Obenen has a variety of projects in his farm. Amos Odeke, one among the workers in the farm, doesn't regret joining to work in this farm, confirming his life has greatly changed. A farm that Obenen started with 6 seedlings in a net worth gives him 6 million annually. Well, that wraps it for GNU Business today. We have the agenda up next, and we're looking at the road to 2026. But before that, let's have a quick look at what the forex rates look like. As of 12th May 2025, the US dollar opened at 3,654.86 buying and was selling at 3,664.86. And by midday, it had dropped value there, 3,654.82 buying and selling at 3,664.82. The US dollar closed in at 3,655.00 and was selling at 3,665.00. The British pound was buying at 4,854.20 and was selling at 4,867.48. The euro was buying at 4,101.27 and selling at 4,112.49. 28.27 was the fee bought. The Kenyan shilling was buying and it was selling at 28.35, and the Tanzanian shilling still at 1.35 and selling at 1.35. And finally, the South African rand was at 200.57 and selling at 201.12. Up next is the agenda. Good morning, Uganda.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
I'll call you every day, yeah, yo, baby, don't know.
You can now get all the Chibuzi out with MTN voice bundles. Call all networks. Kubei Dondoro. Buy a 25-minute voice bundle for only 1,000, or buy any daily voice bundle of your choice. Dial *100*21# and select daily, or use the My MTN app. When we talk together, we are unstoppable.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Maskari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archived stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Juko.
Yo.
Wachiko. Check the shopping, man. What's your secret?
Uganda, haven't you heard of the parish development model PDM?
Yes, I did, but I thought it was just a talk.
No, Sebatia. It is real. I and a few friends together formed a circle, accessed money from the PDM, invested in a portrait project, and now things are moving.
Juko. I thought I was one of your friends.
You are.
But you left me behind.
I didn't leave you in poverty. What you do, just visit your LC2 chairperson and your parish chief and start the process of economic transformation. Just like that. The parish development model is an initiative from the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Local Government designed to transform all lives of Ugandans for the better. PDM, my parish, my development, my life.
Good morning, Uganda. Good morning once again, and thank you so much for choosing UBC TV here to inspire you. My name is Julie Nantaba Musisi, and the road to 2026 surely is one that is interesting. I've been having a behind-the-scenes conversation with our guest today, and as we were talking, we talked about the fact that a lot is happening towards 2026 and a lot is not happening towards 2026. But it's about 8 months left to the general election of the year 2026 here in Uganda. And today we want to look at how ready are political parties as we look forward to 2026 electoral process. Now in studio with me is Ambassador Henry Mayiga, who is a Ugandan Foreign Service officer. You could call him a diplomat in simple terms. Good morning, Ambassador.
Morning, Chinyabu.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much also for giving me the opportunity to come and we talk about things of national importance, including elections,
right,
which are due early next year, and we hope that all is going to go well.
Right. Now, 0709-602-592, that is the WhatsApp number to which you can share your opinion or ask your question away. Now, Ambassador, behind the scenes, we're indeed laughing at a lot is happening and a lot is not yet happening. How would you assess the current state of preparedness of political parties as we look forward to 2026?
Okay, and as far as I'm concerned, I think Uganda has come a long way.
Right.
Because when you look, for instance, at the time between 1962 to 1986, so if you extrapolate that period a little bit longer, up to 1994, Uganda was bedeviled with quite a lot of problems that impacted its politics. And elections were not predictable, they were not regular, because, and as far as I remember, those elections that we had during that period of time were not regular, they were not predictable. For instance, you can look at the period between 1962 to 1980, there was no elections. There were no elections at all throughout that period of time. And then from 86 to 1994, we didn't have really what you can call an election as such. And so things have been changing for the better in the country. Of course, I understand that there is so much that we can still do as a country in order to realize the democratic principles as they're supposed to be, so that there are less complaints as much as possible. So we have not really been doing very badly. We have been doing, as far as I'm concerned, very well, because we can now boast of having predictable and regular elections. 2001, 2006, 2011, 2016, 2021, and now 2026.
Right.
So since that time, since 1996, we've been having regular elections and predictable every 5 years, religiously as a country. And for me, that is already a plus. A complete departure from the time before 1986. Reason being, partly, that the country has been enjoying peace. And therefore, so as we prepare to go into these elections, I'm sure that the voter or the voters in this country, the government that is in charge of the country at the moment, the electoral commission, because we have to look at these stakeholders, extremely important, because each one of them plays a part. If the voter does not go to vote, there will be no votes. If the electoral commission is not prepared in terms of putting in place the very ingredients that are required for that election, the elections will not go on. If the government does not ensure the security and the peace and the stability in the country, elections cannot go on. So as we move towards elections, I believe that they are going to happen and on time. And as to whether all the stakeholders are prepared, take away the political parties, the government is prepared. The Electoral Commission, I can see they are really giving a lot of publicity to whatever they are doing so that we can have the elections next year. So I think the next one is to ask the political parties whether they are ready. As far as the NRM is concerned, to which I belong, I think it's more than ready. And of course, recently you must have seen the internal elections that have been taking place. And you remember that the announcement that came from the president and the spokesperson of the NRM were to the effect that the NRM can now boast of something in the region of 20 million supporters. And that speaks volumes in as far as I'm concerned when it comes to the preparedness of the NRM. Now, for the rest of the parties, I'm not very sure, because we have to look at the various dimensions that determine as to whether parties are prepared. But the NRM is prepared, definitely. There's no doubt about that. I don't have any doubt in my mind as to whether the party to which I belong is prepared, because of quite a number of dimensions that we'll look at.
All right, staying with the NRM being prepared, how is the NRM addressing internal conflicts, especially in regards to primaries? I remember just the recently concluded Kawempe North by-elections. Right before the official election, there were primaries. And we remember the candidate that went through and the one that chose to go independent after not going through. But also in the recently concluded local elections with over 72,000 villages, there has been conflict. And, you know, here on set, we were actually wondering, it's just LC1, why is there such heavy clashes within these elections? How is the NRM addressing concerns such as this?
You know, conflicts, because these are political contestations.
Right.
And therefore, wherever you see a political contest, there is definitely going to be departure in terms of how people look at things and how people look at, for instance, the contest itself and so on and so forth. So those conflicts are expected, whether it is in Uganda or in the other, the rest of the countries that really use elections as a means of selecting their leaders. So for me, I'm not surprised that actually there will always be people who think that probably they've been cheated or things should have gone their way. But of course, it brings us to the other very important aspect in as far as politics is concerned, that whenever you decide to go and take part in a contest, you should expect either to win or to lose. And therefore, that one is, to me, as far as I'm concerned, is extremely important. But coming back to the question that you're asking, as to how does the NRM prepare itself, how has it prepared itself to address those dynamics, internal dynamics that bring about conflict, that people get dissatisfied and all these kinds of things and so on. I'm happy to tell you, Ugandans, that the NRM has got a mechanism of resolving those internal conflicts. And that's why you haven't seen a breakaway faction from the NRM. Of course, we're seeing those kinds of things happening to the rest of the political parties on the political canvas of the country. FDC is split right in the middle, DP is split right in the middle, the UPC are also split. And even those splinter groups that are coming out of all those parties cannot even coalesce together in order to put up a contest or to really challenge the NRM as far as I'm concerned. So yes, the conflicts have been there in as far as the internal elections are concerned of the NRM, and this is not happening for the very first time. But I want to believe that the administration of the party, the managers of the party have done a very good job, because they have provided avenues through which people can complain, and then those complaints are addressed, and in time, so that then the party can move forward. So there is a mechanism. There is a disciplinary committee, for instance. We have an electoral commission, which is vibrant, and I'm sure Ugandans have been seeing that electoral commission under Tanga Odoi and the rest of the team have been doing on the ground to ensure that these conflicts are minimized as much as possible. So, as far as the NRM is concerned, I think the internal mechanism within the party has done a commendable job to make sure that all the dissenting voices in the party addressed, and then solutions are found, so that at the end of the day, when we go for these general elections next year, the party moves together.
But how is the NRM dealing with the issue of primary elections, where we now see independent candidates arising? Because ultimately an independent candidate affects the vote that should have been for the candidate of the party. Moving on to 2026, is there a plan to deal with candidates who choose to go independent?
Absolutely. There are two things which I can mention here. The first one was to clean the register. And I've not seen any other political party, especially those in the opposition, that has had a program to ensure that their registers, maybe they don't even have enough supporters to, but the register has been cleaned up by the NRM. That is step number one. Step number two is a memorandum of understanding that is a requirement that has been put in place to ensure that if you go for the primaries, and you lose, the internal primaries of the NRM, and you lose, and this is supposed to be signed by everybody who goes for those contests, you are then committed not to stand as an independent, unless you don't contest in those, you choose not to contest in those primary elections. But should you choose to become part and parcel of the primary elections within the NRM, then you are committed to make sure that when you lose, you don't come as an independent. So there has been that one, as far as I'm concerned. And secondly, as I mentioned at the beginning of this remark, is that the register has been cleaned up. People went to their village committees, which were referred to as the barazas, and so on and so forth, like it has been happening most especially in Western Uganda. And they would sit as a village or a parish or whatever it was, and ensure that if, for instance, you are dead, somebody's dead, or somebody has left that place for another, then the register weeds out all those who have left or have departed from the world. And for me, that is something that is happening for the very first time, because in the past it hasn't been happening. So addressing this problem, there should be really very, very few complaints. And where complaints have been raised by quite a number of NRM supporters, they've been addressed, because some elections have been repeated, as you must have seen in the media, and that does go a long way in as far as solving the internal conflicts, the internal dissatisfaction in the NRM is concerned. And I want to believe that as we move towards elections, the NRM is going to be the most united party as the times are telling at the moment.
Right. Yeah. We are looking at the road to 2026. And in particular, today we are discussing how ready are political parties as we all gear up to the road 2026. Now, the number is 0709 602 592. That is a WhatsApp number to which you can send your opinion or ask your question or share what is on your mind, as long as you do it respectfully. Moving on, Ambassador, what are the biggest structural challenges you believe that political parties are dealing with as they gear up to 2026?
Now, there are quite a number of dimensions somebody has to look at in order to gauge whether any political party on the political canvas of this country is concerned, their readiness towards, as they prepare to go and take part in the elections 2026. There are quite a number of dimensions. One of them is internal cohesion. I think that is extremely important. In my view, it is number one principle that should be revered by all political parties on the political canvas in this country. The moment you don't have that internal cohesion, the moment you don't have that unity, the moment you don't have, that very strong leadership like it is with the NRM, of somebody by the names President Yoweri Museveni, it becomes extremely difficult to bring together all the, variations in the political party. And I've seen a problem with the rest of the political parties, especially those in the opposition, having a problem to bring together everybody. The rest, of course, is history, but you can see what's happening to the parties which I mentioned earlier in this conversation, what's happening there, the splits that they have, the disagreements they have, and all this kind of, but I've not seen factions within the NRM, first of all developing, and also splitting away from the mainstream. Reason being that the party is united because there is a strong leader in the names of President Yoweri Museveni who brings together all of these variations in terms of political thought. Now, I've not seen that kind of thing happen in the rest of the parties. Take, for instance, if we may decide to look at the FDC. FDC has the faction at Najarankum. It also has another faction at, somewhere here in town, PAFF, which is trying to develop into another political party, and that is another quite big challenge, because as we move towards elections, you can't say that you are going to match, the contest that is ahead of us. If you're just putting together your support structures, the name of the structure, you're trying to register a political party. The NRM is registered long time ago, and it has no those kinds of factions developing or splitting away. Now, the FTC is split right in the middle, as everybody can see. Somebody may say, okay, there is PFF, but as far as the voter is concerned, the PFF is a splinter group from the mainstream FDC. When you go to the DP, same story. Honorable Nombati Mao on the one hand, and the rest of the contestations that we have, or we are seeing on the political canvas of the DP. The UPC is the same, is facing the same problem. And therefore, as far as I'm concerned, the NRM is the only political party which I see is united, and that cohesion within the NRM is extremely important for somebody to say that, yes, let's move towards elections and ensure that we really put up a fight and we become a force to reckon with, and which, in my view, the NRM is already doing. So that internal cohesion is one of the dimensions that I think is extremely important. Now, it also takes us to the other one, which is the resourcefulness of each one of these political parties, both in terms of finances and in terms of personnel, and in terms of the headquarters itself. Now, the NRM, as far as I know, has got a functioning headquarters. It has the human resources throughout the country. You have heard about the registrars or administrators of the various districts that we have in the country that are spread out all throughout the country. And these have been very instrumental in cleaning up the register of the NRM. They have been very instrumental in conducting those very elections that we are talking about, internal elections in the NRM. And I don't see all these kinds of things happening in the rest of the political. So it is extremely important to talk of the human resource. It is important to talk about the financial resource as well. So the NRM is the most resourced political party as far as I'm concerned, because even when it comes to the iPod money that the government gives to all political parties that are represented in Parliament, the NRM takes the lion's share. And that is the law. The law says that a party which has got the biggest number, maybe to put it differently, a party that is represented in Parliament is resourced in accordance with the numbers they have in the August House. And the NRM definitely has got the largest numbers. So there is that money which comes through that channel. And the membership also contribute money to the kitty of the NRM itself. So in as far as the resources are concerned, the NRM is already ahead of everyone. And so they are organized to that level in terms of being in a position to boast of quite adequate amounts of resources that they can use for a political contest that we are moving towards in 2026. Now, you can talk about, of course, the rest of the friends that we have across the globe. Now, the NRM is the most exposed out of all the political parties. And it has these international friends who are very instrumental when it comes to international recognition, when it comes to even sometimes supporting, in a sense, the political party. I'm not aware of any other political party on the political canvas in this country that has got those very powerful trappings and which help in as far as taking part in the political contestation that we are moving towards in 2026.
Right. That is the analysis of Ambassador Henry Maiga. He is in studio with us as we discuss how ready political parties are on the road towards 2026. Now, Innocent comes through and says, I'm Innocent, a student at BCK. I understand that we are moving to election time. NRM is allowed to move and do their activities, but why is the opposition oppressed and not allowed to move? For example, the campaign of the protest vote. And you say thank you, gracias. How would you speak to Innocent?
Well, political contest, I mean, that is the nature of politics. That even if you were to speak about or to speak to the situations in other countries which have had democracy for a very long time. I mean, we can give an example, for instance, of the US. They've had democracy for the last 250 years, but still they have issues. And therefore, you cannot expect that a country like Uganda, which has had democracy since the plebiscite or the referendum of 2005, to have deepened its democracy to a level where I think that everything should be or is supposed to be as even as possible. I don't think that is a possibility. However, I must add that we have come a long way. That right now as we speak, elections are regular and predictable every 5 years. For me, that is already a very big plus. And whoever wants to contest in these elections is free to do so, in accordance with the law, because the law is very simple. It says that, for instance, if you want to hold a rally, there is a process through which you are supposed to go. And many of these people who I see and I hear talking about the uneven playing field are actually, in a majority of cases, trying to flout those very policies and laws that we have in the country. For instance, I remember when Kizza Besigye was still very active within the FDC, and he would come from Kasangati and cause a lot of mayhem along Gayaza Road, and really trampling sometimes markets and all these kinds of things with his supporters. That is unacceptable. Or you want to do a rally and then you go to the central business district of Kampala. That is unacceptable. Because if you want, for instance, to have a rally, like the NRM, I've always seen them having rallies at Kololo airstrip. The police is informed and all these kinds of things, and they order, and they are not going to march into markets, they are not going to march into the central business. I've not seen the NRM march to the central business district, but I've seen the FDC and the rest of the political actors in this country do so. So you're supposed to move according to the law. And therefore, that really puts a huge responsibility on everybody who wants to take part in either the politics of this country or any contest, political, and in this case I'm talking about the general elections, to make sure that you become as lawful as possible. The moment you veer away from the law, then the law is going to catch up with you. And therefore, the complaints, in my view, are not really holding. The complaints, especially from the opposition, that they are not being allowed. Because recently, as you know, PFF, for instance, has been looking for the promoters of the party, since they are in the process of registering their political party. They've been looking for the 20, is it 20 or 50 or something, that I don't recall exactly what the number is. But what I know is that PFF has been looking for those promoters per district, and nobody has stopped them. And they have submitted all those 20. So how are we doing? If the law, I mean, if the security organs in this country were stopping them from doing so, how did they collect those signatures from the district? So for me, as far as I'm concerned, I think the weakness really goes back to the political actors on the opposition political canvas, that they are not doing what they are not supposed to do, and if they were doing so, then probably the situation would be different. So the problem actually lies with the opposition, as far as I'm concerned. If you want, for instance, to have rallies, if you want to mobilize people and all those kinds of things, ensure that you do those things according to the law or in accordance with the law. Then the law is not going to catch up with you.
Right.
Yeah.
You clearly assessed the picture of what the opposition is like in regards to unity. In your perspective, do you think there is a viable chance for a single presidential candidate collectively from the opposition?
Well, again, that I leave it to them, because it is up to them. But from what I can see is that, of course, there has been talk. We have seen quite a number of attempts by the opposition political parties to try to come together. The FDC just a couple of months ago was talking to NUP. I don't know whether the DPs were also trying to do the same so that they can come up with one presidential candidate. But as far as I can see, I don't think it's going to be possible because the interests of all these groups in the opposition are as diverse as they are conflicting, because each one of them wants to produce a presidential candidate, and that alone increases the problem that they have amongst themselves. And I don't think it's going to be possible for them to have that joint. But I mean, the attempts have been there before. It's not like it's happening for the very first time. I remember there was a joint presidential candidate in 1996 by the names Paul Kawanga Samogere, may his soul rest in eternal peace. And he tried to cobble together all the political shades of political opinion in the opposition. And the rest is history. He lost. 2001, Kizza Besigye was fronted by the various opposition groups, and he went into that contest. He lost it. 2006, same story. Kizza Besigye came. 2011, Kizza Besigye and quite a number of other people tried to cobble together the political groups that we have in this country to put up one presidential candidate. They still lost. 2016, you saw what happened at that point in time. You remember even the Right Honorable Emeritus Amam Babas also took part in those elections. I remember they tried to put together everybody, and it became absolutely impossible for them to agree. 2021, same story. I am not really very sure, and I don't think it's going to happen, that the opposition groups are going to have one joint presidential candidate, because in my view, all the political groups on the opposition political canvas are very weak, and you cannot aggregate weaknesses. You can only aggregate points of strength, which points of strength I don't see in these opposition political parties. But, well, they can try and put up one presidential candidate, but I can see it's a tall order.
Right, let's get into a bit of more of your comments. Good morning, UBC. Thanks for the updates. But I hope Professor is serious on, Ambassador is serious on the point he mentioned that when you fail in your primaries, no more contesting, because we ever witnessed this most in the NRM party. Thank you. This is Okware Stephen from Tororo. He needs an assurance that indeed whoever fails at the primaries level shall not contest thereafter. And somebody else comes through. This is Robert, who says, thank you for the show. Something to inquire about the memorandum talked about. How about it after primaries, and one is not satisfied with the party primaries and wants to withdraw their membership from the party? Will they still be held by the memorandum? This is Robert.
Well, because you see, discipline is extremely important. I like the church because the most bureaucratic institutions in the world are two: the church and the army. You give an order, it's finished. And I'm happy about what happened in the during the recent elections in the Vatican for the new Pope.
Yes.
Because people were cobbled together in a room, Sistine Chapel. All the cardinals, they sat, and of course the rule was that if you're 80 and above, no elections,
yes,
you can only come, for instance, for prayers and all these kinds of things and so on. And that was extremely beautiful, and as far as I'm concerned. And then the rest is history. Of course, Pope Leo came through as the leader of the Catholic Church. Reason being, discipline. Once you set the parameters of behavior in any institution, whether church, political party, army, and so on and so forth, make sure that you abide by those rules. If you think it is unfair and you have lost unfairly, there are systems within the political party, as far as the NRM is concerned, because I understand NUP has been selling their candidatures. You want to become an MP, a flag bearer in a constituency, then you must part with as much. I've seen these things in the media. I don't know whether they are correct, but I've seen them there, that you buy actually the candidature.
Right.
Yeah, I've heard those stories, and I have not seen anybody coming to refute. But in the NRM, it's different. You come for a contest. If you lose, the requirement now is that you don't contest as an independent. If you choose to do so, then you're now riding against the full wrath of the political party. I'm not the one who has put these requirements, but I think this is an attempt by the NRM to make sure that they encourage as much discipline within the party as possible. And that's the only way we can even boast about being disciplined as a party, and also we get into government and also become disciplined while we're in government. But if it's kangaroo way of doing things, like I see in the rest of the political parties, where they can't even hold, they can't even have primary elections, because I've not seen any other political party doing primary elections. I have seen, for instance, the NUP, which is being referred to by the Monitor. I was reading this morning an article about NUP in the Monitor, the largest political party. Fine, that's okay. But if you're the largest political opposition party, then it is incumbent upon you to make sure that you have as much discipline within your party as possible. The moment you don't have that discipline, you're going to have problems. So I just want to encourage the membership of the NRM that yes, when you go for these primary elections, yes, go there expecting either a win or a loss. And therefore, if you win, fine. Then become a uniting voice, so that even those who didn't support you can come along with you. But if you lose, it is again incumbent upon you that you either, if you're not satisfied, take the route of seeking for disciplinary action within the structures of the party, or if that is not possible, then make sure that you don't stand against the official candidate in that. And that's, for me, the bottom line. The moment we respect that, we're going to see a lot of discipline in the NRM. If we don't, then there will be a lot of chaos. And we don't want to see chaos, because that chaos, once it happens to the NRM, then it can happen to the rest of the political parties, with the small political parties in the country. And we are giving a very bad example to the rest of the political. So the best we can do, the best the NRM can do, is to ensure that there is as much discipline as possible. If you feel that probably the contest is not going to be fair, then don't take part. But if you subject yourself to those primary elections and then you lose, you must accept the outcome.
0709-602-592, that is the WhatsApp number to which you can share your opinion. Now let us look at the Electoral Commission. In your perspective, how do you think, what role do you think the Electoral Commission is playing in either hindering or facilitating the readiness of political parties?
And I'm sure we are now talking about the National Electoral Commission, because
National Electoral Commission,
the NRM has got also an Electoral Commission.
Yes,
so the national, and as far as I'm concerned, I think the dates, everything is moving according to the planned dates. On that one, I give them a plus. Of course, earlier on, they had asked for a budget so that they can conduct these processes as effectively as possible. What I'm not very sure of is whether, and I wish they were here in this talk show, is whether all the monies that they asked from government have been supplied. If they have, then they will have no reason to say or to claim that they can't do their job. But if all the resources have not been given, that means also that we need, probably the Electoral Commission will need to work within that budget or scale down some of the expectations that they had and some of the activities they had, so that they fit in the budget, because resources, as you know, in economics will never be enough, and therefore we have to plan with whatever we have. So, and as far as I'm concerned, I think the Electoral Commission is doing a very good job. Recently, I think it must have been probably something at the beginning of March, they gave to the Ugandan voter the roadmap to elections, showing the kinds of activities that will take place at every other time until we have these elections. And for me, that was already a plus. Then I have seen them also planning to clean up the registers, because cleaning up the registers is one of the most important things that you have to do before elections, because some people probably have left this world, others have changed the location, others would want probably to change their voting stations and so on and so forth. So that too is being worked on by the Electoral Commission. So I want to give them a level of credit that is big enough that the Electoral Commission is equal to the job, and they are doing something that is very commendable in as far as the preparations for the elections of 2026 are concerned. And I want to believe that we are going to have a credible register, a credible electoral process, and so on and so forth, so that we get this thing out of one, then we concentrate on other things that really develop the country.
Right. Now let's look at the impact of social media and digital platforms altogether. As we all know, Facebook is still off use in Uganda since 2021, and it can't be accessed. But then Facebook also has many Ugandans that are active on it, that use it, and use many other social media sites. So in your perspective, what is the impact of the digital platforms as well as social media sites in the upcoming election?
Of course, that is an extremely important one because the media is referred to as the fourth estate. And you want to probably lump them together, the media and then the social media.
Actually, social media now is fifth estate.
Fine.
Yes.
Now that there is that clarification, I think the argument even becomes much, much better.
Yeah.
That they are supposed to play a role which is constructive in my view. And it's extremely difficult to control social media. In a majority of cases, in many cases, they inform the voter about their rights, about the preparations, about a number of things that concern
And they
elections.
also have the ability to shape.
And they also have the ability to shape people's opinions.
Right.
So that either those opinions favor or disfavor whoever is in the political contest, which is a very constructive aspect in as far as elections are concerned. Where probably we need to be very careful, and I'm happy that you're talking about Facebook, is what I have seen in the past. We can go to Rwanda, for instance, where the media played a role, and we ended up having a genocide in Rwanda. So if you're not careful, the media, or is it social media, can actually play a role towards having more political instability in the country, rather than, if we are not careful, I'm saying so. Of course, I'm also a user of social media, so all of us can use it. But the important one is for us to use it as constructively as possible. The Rwanda story is still live in our minds. And I remember, of course, by 1980, there was no social media, but somebody went, for instance, to State Square in 1980. I'm not going to name names, and may his soul rest in eternal peace, and began announcing election results, and yet he wasn't part of the Electoral Commission. But somebody was there, the State Square, here in Kampala, and was announcing so-and-so has won here, so-and-so has won here, so-and-so. And now that we have social media, if it is not guided, if it becomes unprincipled, and God forbid, I want to really assume that they are going to be as effective as possible, and also to be above those petty things that they do sometimes that cause a lot of problems in the electoral season. So I want to believe that the social media is going to do a very constructive job to make sure that people are informed about who of these political candidates for president, for MP, for LCs, and so on and so forth can do a better job than the other one. That's extremely important. And of course, everyone would aspire to see that kind of thing happening in our country, because that's the only way how we can put together this country and build it.
Right, right. Now we are starting to bring this conversation to a close. I can see a couple of your comments. Oquin Nourish says, thanks for the show. I think elections will be in Uganda after President Museveni has retired and is now inspiring others. I think that's what he meant. And Nelson Joe says, NRM seems to not be doing according to the law because it only favors MPs. I hope you can elaborate on that one, Nelson Joe, so that it has clarity in what you are trying to put across. But Ambassador, speak to Oquinorish, who says that he believes in his perspective that elections will only be if President Museveni has retired and is now inspiring others.
Well, I don't know how old Norris is, because at the beginning of our conversation I said that there was a time between 1962, or even beyond, I mean before 1962, when the white colonialists were still in charge of this country, when we didn't have real elections, but people were just giving decrees. Then during Idi Amin's time, there was no elections, 8 years, no elections. And I was giving that perspective so that people can understand, especially those who have not been exposed to the history of this country effectively, because we didn't have elections. But right now, as we speak, we have had elections consecutively for every 5 years, after every 5 years. And these elections have been predictable and regular. And I'm not saying that Uganda is full of angels. We're not coming from heaven. And I'm not saying that we are doing angelic things here. There are quite a number, of course, problems that we still have as a country and as far as elections are concerned, no doubt about it. But to say that elections will only happen after President Yoweri Museveni has left, of course that is a personal opinion, which is okay, and I respect it. My opinion is that elections are now predictable and regular, and whoever wants, okay, put it differently. If somebody thinks that elections are not occurring in this country, then probably what you can say is that people shouldn't go to them. But I've seen the opposition also participating in these elections and winning them.
Right.
And winning them, not losing, but winning them. But look, there is this best player on the football pitch. He's called President Yoweri Museveni. He keeps winning. So I am sure elections have been happening, and they will happen even after President Yoweri Museveni has left. There's no doubt about it.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Henry, for coming through to UBC TV. Now, I'll close this conversation with a comment from Ronald Okeng, who says to enhance readiness for Uganda's 2026 general elections, political parties should focus on several key strategies. These include strengthening internal structures through updated registrations, internal elections, and capacity building, engaging voters through grassroots mobilization, voter education, and continuous outreach, developing clear policies and manifestos, leveraging technology and media for campaigns, building coalitions and partnerships, ensuring financial preparedness through effective fundraising and management, and monitoring and adapting to electoral reforms. By implementing these strategies, parties can improve their chances of success and contribute to a more credible and inclusive electoral process. This is Ronald Okeng. Thank you, Ronald, and thank you so much to everyone that has been on the show and on this particular conversation. Good morning, Uganda.
Thank you very much.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
I'll call you every day, yeah, yo, baby, don't know.
You can now get all the Chibuzi out with MTN voice bundles. Call all networks. Kubei Dondoro. Buy a 25-minute voice bundle for only 1,000. Or buy any daily voice bundle of your choice. Dial *100 *21 hash and select daily, or use the My MTN app. When we talk together, we are unstoppable.
We're going to be talking about farming, but it's not me that's going to do that.
My name is Hava K. Luanga.
My name is Larry Charles K.
Let's go!
Mixed farm is a type of farming that involves growing crops and raising livestock. This is the spice garden and for the vegetables.
My first favorite spice has to be black pepper.
What's black pepper in Uganda?
Kamulali or mudagavu.
What? We're going to talk about the sechunga. We're going to see how big it is, as big as Larry's head. And then we're going to talk about the mangada. So we're going to get there. We have still so many farms to visit, and I would like to hear from you. This is the Little Farmer Show, and we are bringing coolness back to farming. See you!
Junko.
Yo.
Wachiko. Check the shopping, man. What's your secret?
Uganda wange, haven't you heard of the parish development model PDM?
Yes, I did, but I thought it was just a talk.
No, Sebatia. It is real. I and a few friends together formed a circle, accessed money from the PDM, invested in a portrait project, and now things are moving.
Junko. I thought I was one of your friends.
You are.
But you left me behind.
I didn't leave you in poverty. What you do, just visit your LC2 chairperson and your parish chief and start the process of economic transformation. Just like that. The parish development model is an initiative from the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Local Government designed to transform all lives of Ugandans for the better. PDM, my parish, my development, my life.
In a nation hungry for truth, A world where every story matters.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning